Welcome to the Cross the Line podcast. My name is Carlos Smith, and I have a special guest today, somebody that I'm happy to call a friend and a mentor. He's been very helpful for me along my journey so far. His name is Ken Blankenship, a.k.a. KB. How you doing?
Doing well, Los. Appreciate it, buddy.
I appreciate you coming to sit down with me, and I can always count on you. You know, every time so far I've called you, you've always answered the phone.
Try to, man.
Every single time. But first off, let me start off by saying congratulations with your Eagles.
Yeah,
last week when we were doing making our rounds, you gave me about 3 or 4 different scenarios, and in every single one of them, you had the Eagles winning.
Uh-huh.
So go ahead and break that down for me.
Well, and thanks for the kind words, and just want to say something about that real quickly. I've had, several mentors, that have helped me in this business, in the radio business, and which is now the radio and podcast kind of business, right? But not the least of which was my dad, who was, a radio man for years and years, not to mention the most incredible individual I've ever, met, much less been around. So he was my big inspiration. And, maybe it's true that it gets in your blood. So,
right.
But anyway, all that aside, I thought the Super Bowl was first and foremost a very good game. And I think if you were really to poll, people on what they want to see, outside of, a rabid fan base, I think most people would tell you they just want to see a good, close, competitive game. And I think that's what we saw. And I said going in, I think I gave 5 scenarios, the first 4 of which I saw the Eagles winning the game, and the very last one being that the Patriots would win it closely. And I thought that was the least likely scenario, even though most people were kind of picking like that. And New England indeed was a favorite, I think by maybe 4.5 or something like that going into that game. But I just thought Philadelphia's overall roster, their team, and not just players, but their coaching staff, Doug Peterson and that staff and everything, while probably up against they were up against a legendary team, coaching staff, organization, the whole nine, what I think you could truthfully call a dynasty. I just thought Philadelphia, I was very confident. Let's put it like this. And I told you this before we went on the air the other night. I was very confident in Philadelphia's chances to not only win that game, but to win it handily. Matter of fact, that was my most likely scenario. What I probably did was shortchanged New England a pretty good bit. And it wasn't, and I really didn't intend to disrespect New England or their personnel or anything about that. Maybe the best organization in all of pro sports, maybe even in the history of sports. I think you'd have to put them in that conversation. It wasn't meant that way at all. It just meant that their defense, even though they've had a rather impressive turnaround this year from the way they started off earlier in the year, I still thought that their defensive personnel was at least parts of their roster a little bit suspect. And it was really way more an endorsement for Philadelphia's roster and their coaching staff and the way they've played this year, and really as much as anything the depth. Because I thought Philadelphia with a really what I think is a historically great offensive line, not so much that they totally overpower you, but that, like we were talking about before on this also, is that this offensive line is so athletic, they can get out on the edges and do some really cool things. And then when you put those 2 big, impressive backs in Jay Ajayi and especially LeGarrette Blount, and Ajayi being the one of those 2 with maybe the more upside, but LeGarrette Blount being a proven commodity in this league, has won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, and he has, for whatever it's worth, maybe a little bit of a revenge factor or a, get his previous, and not that that was that big a deal, I don't think, in Blunt's mind or anybody else's, but maybe a little bit of that. But the main thing is that he's 250 pounds and he's got really quick feet for a guy that size and running behind that offensive line. Plus, Philadelphia, staying with the offensive scheme. I don't know if you wanted to spend this much time on this.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
But anyway, it's not like they can't throw the ball. Now, Carson Wentz, an MVP candidate, a guy that in his second year, a lot of football experts said would have won going away the MVP vote, was playing at a great and really Hall of Fame level this year because of several factors. He goes down, and so it looks like the same typical Philadelphia sports story where you get snake bit in the end. You get close, you get snake bit in the end. But, you had to know at least a little bit better because Nick Foles has already had success not only in this league, but he's had success with this organization, different coaching staff and everything. Before it was with Chip Kelly and that new kind of offense that they were putting on the NFL, that high tempo, that high conditioning, and I think that kind of took the NFL by storm, and then they adjusted to it. But that first year, Nick Foles throws 27 touchdowns and only 2 picks.
Right.
And so anyway, but I still knew that the head coach of the Eagles, Doug Peterson, not only played the position quarterback in the NFL as a backup to Brett Favre and others, but he also, has been coaching it and has been somewhat of and maybe you could probably drop the somewhat, but he's been a quarterback coaching guru in this league, and a guy who really understands offenses and how to attack defenses. And I just thought that combination, and I didn't think Nick Foles had to be tremendous for them to win this Super Bowl, but as it turned out, I think we saw that he was tremendous that day. And even though Tom Brady, he
did all he could.
He did all he could do, and he had a historically great game numbers-wise and all that. But Nick Foles went toe-to-toe with him, and as I heard another pundit say, shortly after the Super Bowl, he made more tight window throws in that game than Brady did. Matter of fact, Brady early in that game was kind of off. He was missing.
He was throwing some ducks early in the game.
He was, and those are passes that he almost hits almost every Sunday, no matter what. I mean, he might miss them 1 out of 50 Sundays, but he was not real sharp. I don't know if it was a cut on his hand still healing or whatever it was. And he eventually found a rhythm, and
got it going.
One thing real quickly to interject here, I think when Malcolm Jenkins with a clean and totally official hit, no spearing or anything like that,
clean hit.
When he knocked out Brandon Cooks, their wide receiver who is their deep threat, whose numbers this year, his yards per catch numbers this year were more than Randy Moss's the year that he had a historical year with Tom Brady in New England. I thought that was a huge part of Philadelphia's success in that game because you essentially took that long ball threat away and all that speed on the outside. But anyway, I thought for what I and maybe others saw going into the Super Bowl, a New England roster that wasn't, I thought, nearly as good as Philadelphia's, all the way across the board. I thought they played pretty well. On both sides of the football. I mean, Philadelphia did get the running game going, and Fultz was tremendous, but I think he was tremendous under pretty good defensive, maybe not so much pressure because he had a lot of room to see and operate, but a pretty good coverage. And overall, I thought New England, for the roster they had, played pretty well and made Philadelphia maybe go to the next level.
I agree. When I watched the game, I mean, first of all, I picked New England to win just because I couldn't bet against Tom Brady.
It's not a bad pick,
right?
I mean, that's the reasoning, that's sound reasoning.
That's the reason for anybody who picked New England, pretty much Tom Brady. But just sitting back watching the game, I just had this feeling the whole time, like Tom was doing all he can, but just watching it, it just didn't feel like they had enough to. It didn't feel like he had enough to come back and win the game. So he did all he could, but then in the end, the sack, the strip sack or whatever. Yeah, but it just, like you said, when Brandon Cooks went out the game, they kind of hurt him in the long run. But Tom did all he could. I don't blame him. It's pretty much the defense. Philly, you guys did anything you wanted to do, pretty much running, throwing. The play calling was excellent. But I just didn't feel like New England had enough to win the game. Just sitting back watching it.
Well, listen, I thought the defensive effort by New England was very good because, it wasn't like, even though Philly got that running game going and all that, the touchdowns that they scored, you think about Alshon Jeffrey's catch for a touchdown, the very first touchdown of the game. It was a really nice throw and an even better catch. So he had to make it at the back of the end zone under heavy coverage.
Right.
Corey Clement's touchdown was heavily guarded. He had to make a back of the end zone catch, which probably shouldn't have stood, I thought. So that maybe that's a gift. But, I mean, the point is that the D was there. Philly was just making plays, but New England's defense, I thought, was good enough to make them make plays. And it ended up being a very exciting Super Bowl, and one that was, a one-possession game throughout the whole. It wasn't one of those games where it had just good moments. I think the good moments came early, and they stayed, and we saw what I thought was a classic Super Bowl.
How much do you feel that Malcolm Butler not playing hurt New England?
I think a good bit. Would they have won it without him? Who knows? And you can speculate, and the game went down as it went down. But I'll say this about Malcolm Butler. When he bust on the scene out of West Alabama or Alabama State or wherever, nobody had heard of this kid, right? And that's what New England does. That's what Belichick and that coaching staff does, and the brain trust and all that. They find just gems, and these guys are legitimate pro. I mean, think about their wide receiving core. Think about, all the way across the board. They find guys who are legit pro NFL athletes but have very little or no name, and they put them with the GOAT, if you want, and the GOAT finds them, or that outstanding offensive line who's not only protected Brady over the years but been good running the ball as well at times. Think about their backs. Before 2 or 3 years ago, who had heard of James White? A little bit with Deion Lewis, but anyway. So anyway, I thought it was a real good effort by New England, but just too much Philly.
Going forward, I believe New England, they're going to have a hard time getting back. I just think the talent is not there. Yeah. To me, I've always said I believe they're taking Tom Brady for granted because they just take, even though they win, they just take no-name guys and plug them in. But I just wish they put more talent around him to
spend a little bit more money.
Yeah. And then, like we said with Malcolm Butler, I kind of see with him, you bring in Stephon Gilmore, you pay him instead of Malcolm Butler, who helped you win the Super Bowl already. So kind of feel like that maybe they kind of rubbed him the wrong way all year. I don't know why he was benched or whatever. They said it was right. He didn't find out until right before kickoff that he wasn't playing or whatever. Yeah. So it kind of that hurt New England as well.
I heard it was a combination of things. I heard he had been a little bit ill. I had heard that. I heard 4 or 5 things. I heard there was a possible team violation. Maybe he got caught smoking weed or something like that. I don't know if that's speculation. He denied all of that. Mm-hmm. So you don't know how much truth there is to that rumor. I haven't really checked with my Boston sources, and they're pretty good. So I'll, maybe next time, maybe if we do another one of these, I'll have more, definitive information. But I don't have that right now. But whatever it was. Hey, and the other thing is if he violated team rules, and once again, I'm biting off of another reporter, but isn't that what we all do?
Right.
But if he did, and I don't think Belichick or anybody else in that organization would have punished him if he didn't actually do something like, be late to a meeting. I guess it's kind of how much do you weigh what he did, his violations, versus the need to play him. And obviously, Bill Belichick's the captain of that ship, and he found a need to keep him out of that game for the most part. And, did that hurt them? Yeah, it hurt them some. How much? I don't know. Maybe never answer.
I don't think the way Philly was going down the field, it would help that much because they could still run the ball.
Yeah.
But I think just him being out there would have just gave the team extra motivation, help them out. But I think
plus he's probably, along with Gilmore, closest thing they have to a, what we call a shutdown corner or, a press cover guy. And he's a very tough cat, and he's an upper level athlete, and he's a gamer,
Mm-hmm.
He's a gamer. Yep. And he hasn't had the greatest year compared to his other years, but I just got a feeling, and who knows what Belichick is thinking and his reasoning and all that. He doesn't give you much, and we kind of get it as the weeks and weeks go by. But I just feel like unless his what's the word I'm looking for? His indiscretions were egregious. unless that was the case, I believe I'd have played him at least some.
Me too. I think
that's just me.
I feel like you owe it to your team to give them the best chance to win the game, and it just feel like you kind of shortchanged them.
Maybe just to make a point or something.
Yeah, it might have been just to make a point, or everything that's going on with
tough call,
Garoppolo and the whole organization right now. Maybe he kind of did it out of spite. But I feel like you owe it to not only Tone but your team to try to win the game. But before we get off of this, going forward with your Eagles, people have been talking about Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. So what do you think the Eagles need to do going forward?
Well, it's a great problem to have, if there is such a thing. For one, Nick Foles can play the quarterback position at a high level in the league. We've already seen that. We saw that in the Super Bowl. But even more importantly, Los, I believe, is the fact that Nick Foles is an outstanding human being. He's a man of integrity. He's a faith guy. And listen, can you be a good person without being a faith person? Yeah, I guess. But I know, I feel like I have the discernment to see when someone's genuine in their faith. And I've never met Nick Foles, but from everything I see and read and hear, he is an outstanding man of faith. And he's actually studying to go into the ministry when he retires from football. So all that said, I believe this dilemma, if you will, this challenge for the Philadelphia Eagles organization will work itself out. For one, not only is Foles let's call it a man of integrity and all that, but there's several on that roster that are, and there truly is, for one reason or another, a family environment in this Eagle organization. I mean, but anyway, I won't really go down that road, but there's a lot to be said for that. And so I believe the organization will take their time and let Nick Foles decide what he wants to do, knowing that, let me make a baseball analogy. Let's say you had an outstanding major league center fielder, okay? And he, in his early years, was kind of up and down. He did some real nice things for you. As a matter of fact, had a great year. I'm making a parallel, of course, to Nick Foles playing a quarterback position. But alongside him, you also had another center fielder named Willie Mays. My point being is that if Mays gets hurt, even though the other outfielder may be a Major League Baseball all-star, he ain't Willie Mays.
Right.
And that's the opinion I believe most of us have, and everybody in the Philadelphia Eagles organization has about Carson Wentz. They believe his upside is truly unlimited, and I believe the same. I think every box you can check for being a Hall of Fame NFL quarterback that Carson Wentz has already started to check and will, barring any other bad injuries, continue to check. And I think he's on a Hall of Fame career, or at least a really good one. So does Nick want to stick around in a supporting role? That would be great, and he might do that. But if he chooses to sign with somebody else in free agency, there's nobody in their right mind, and Eagles fans aren't always in their right mind, but there's nobody in that Eagles organization who's on payroll gonna second guess him or question him. That, everybody has to do what's right for them and their family. And if he chooses to go be a starter somewhere else, there's going to be some teams looking for him. But so I think it's a problem that kind of works itself out.
I believe he still has one more year on his contract.
Yes.
So if what I would do is I would hold on to him, at least up until the trade deadline, and see how other teams are doing, see who's doing bad, who needs a quarterback. But also you need to not rush it because of Carson Wentz. Make sure he's healthy. If he's not healthy, I would just hold on to him throughout the whole season if I have to, just to give a team the best chance to win. But I think it's a good situation to be in as well, because you have two really good quarterbacks. Wentz, he's with number 2 pick in the draft. He is the future. Absolutely. So you hang on to him, and I believe he would have been the MVP had he not got hurt. So just hang on to him for the at least up until the trade deadline. Maybe see who's doing bad. They'll probably give you a call, maybe off a first-round pick for Nick Foles, and then go from there. But I think going forward, of course, Carson Wentz, he's not going anywhere. So just hang on to Nick Foles. But before we get off football, let's go down to the college level. National Signing Day.
Yep.
The video went viral of Jacob Copeland. He decided to go to Florida over Alabama and Tennessee. And, his mom was sitting right beside him, and she didn't look too happy. So she got up and left, walked in front of the camera, and it went viral. Mm-hmm. So I want to know what you thought about Jacob Copeland's situation and then overall national signing they being such a big event.
Yeah, well, let's set the table on that video. First off, his mom is sitting at the table with him, and he's got the 3 hats, right? He's got the Alabama, the LSU, I think, and the Tennessee hat, right? His mom has on an Alabama sweatshirt, mm-hmm. and she's got a Tennessee beanie on. And he ends up picking Florida, right? And obviously, the reporter who asked him, when she got up and walked off, disgusted. And listen, she walked off, and you could tell she was disgusted. But she didn't really make a big – I guess you could kind of say she made a big scene by walking off. She probably should have just sat there and supported her son. But it needs to be noted that she did come back moments later and apologize and everything. It was an interesting moment, to say the least. But at the end of the day, at the end of that decision, when you're about to ink that paper, it's got to be the individual who thinks – I think you should get advice, especially from your friends – especially from your family and close friends, in that order, not in another order. And I guess that kind of depends on who you consider family, right? But no, I think you ought to get, as much good advice from people that you care about and who care about you as much as possible. At the end of the day, it's the athlete themselves that has to make that decision, and not all of them make the right decision. He may go down to Florida and not be happy, but down in Florida now, we know Dan Mullen can coach. He just came over from Mississippi State. So there's a new coaching regime down there. Florida, as far as the football program, is always on very good footing because the money's down there, the fan support, the base, and the whole nine. They've won national titles before. So what can you say? It couldn't have been that bad a choice. But it was interesting. And as far as signing day itself, I'll just be honest with you. I've been doing sports talk radio actually in this market for close to 25 years, and that just hasn't been a real big thing with me, and not nearly as much in football as it is with basketball. Now, it is a big thing with a lot of guys who do what I do or do what we do, mm-hmm. But to me, and listen, I'm into the athletes and all that. Recently we did the Zion Williamson thing where he was going to go. And I was all up in that because I'm the number one spokesman in the world for Zion Williamson. I don't know if you knew that, but anytime you need anything on him, let me know. Yeah, man, it is a big deal to a lot of people, and just takes a little bit of a backseat to me.
Right. And for me, just to talk about Jacob Copeland's situation, when I saw the video, I felt bad for the kid because, if anybody has your back, it's your mom. Your mama's always going to be there. So just to see her get up, I thought it was kind of selfish because she was taken away from his decision. It's about him. This is his day to be happy. So when she gets up and just walks off, it's basically she doesn't support his decision. So I felt bad for the kid. And even though she came back later on, gave him a hug, and he was crying, I still thought it was wrong and selfish for her to get up But it kind of felt awkward. Like you said, she had on the Alabama hoodie and Tennessee cap. And then there was another guy in the back. I'm not sure who he was. He had on some Tennessee gear as well. Yeah. But just for her to get up and walk in front of the screen and after he made his decision, I felt bad. And you can't really ask not the reporter because he's doing his job. Somebody gets up, you're going to ask, who left?
And maybe leave it at that. But, because he pressed a little bit much. And when the kid was kind of embarrassing, it was kind of an awkward moment, to say the least. Now let me turn this back on you, the interviewee, asking a question of the interviewer. You said you felt bad for the kid. I would say bad being a relative term, right? Because, I feel bad for that individual because of that moment. But think about it, and I know you didn't mean this by it, but this is interesting. The kid's he's a 5-star, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least a 4. He's a 4 or 5-star, right? He's getting ready to go to a D1 Power 5 school on a scholarship. He's obviously got good enough grades to go. He's going to go to college at a major university. And Los, I don't know where you did your schooling, but I went to Winthrop. My point being is that Yeah, I feel bad because that was an awkward moment. But this dude's getting ready to go be a part of something really special. He's getting ready to get an education. He's getting ready to pick from a big pool of possible future mates there at the school he attends. So no, I don't feel bad for the kid. It was an awkward moment, but the world is his oyster. No, I know what you're saying. But it was an awkward moment.
But I believe he'll go off and do well. I'm rooting for the kid.
Sure, absolutely.
And he's not the first one that's happened to, though. It's going to happen. But
it was interesting.
Yeah,
more than anything.
But on a large scale, I'm pretty much like you. Unless I'm covering these events, like I did when Zion played. When Spartanburg, they came to Dorman for that tournament a couple of years ago. Unless I'm pretty much at these events, I can't. It's hard for me to follow these kids when they're juniors, sophomore, juniors, until they get to the collegiate level. But
someone's got to work, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, so on to the next topic. Right. NBA is pretty much officially NBA basketball season now that football is over with. So it's trade deadline, like we were talking.
Trade deadline in less than 3 hours. Right now, as we speak, it's 1:06 p.m.
So it's
on February, what is it, the 8th, isn't it?
Yep.
February 8th. And so trade deadline's at 4 p.m. today, Eastern time, I believe.
Yep. Right? And right before we started recording, we were talking about Isaiah Thomas. He's on the move again. So what do you think?
Well, the Isaiah Thomas thing did not work out in Cleveland, to say the least, right? But I think there's at least 2 or 3 noteworthy things here. For one, I still don't think Isaiah Thomas is healthy. I mean, you can tell that by watching him play and the limited sample size we had this year of him playing with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I think one thing that may have at least somewhat completed this trade, in other words, maybe Cleveland would have been a little more hesitant to do this if it weren't for the fact that Isaiah in the last 2 or 3 days has spoken out, maybe when he should have kept his mouth shut. I don't even know what cliche it is, but there's a certain wisdom, if you would, to when you're in a new environment, go ahead and get established at what you're doing before you voice an opinion on your new surroundings. In other words, if you're coming to a new job, and you're around your coworkers and you've only been there a week and you're telling people what's wrong with them and how to change things and switch things, I think he may have made a small mistake by doing that. Why not make sure everything works out on the court? So now, as the months and maybe even years, but at least the months wear on, and you're starting to add to some of the success, and in other words, I mean, there's a time to voice your opinion, there's a time not, and this might not have been the time, especially when they're in such a mess. So that, and the fact that Isaiah Thomas, although wonderfully talented with the ball in his hands when he's healthy, we saw that last year, averaging 29 a game or something like that, leading the NBA most of the year, fourth quarter scoring, being a super clutch player. But all that aside, not healthy this year, didn't look like it was going to work out anyway. And plus the fact of his defensive liabilities are just way too much. And they make the trade, sending him and Channing Frye and maybe one other to the Lakers.
A first-round pick.
Yeah, and a first-round pick.
The Cleveland first-round pick, not the Brooklyn.
Cleveland's first-round pick. And in return, they get Jordan Clarkson. I don't know how much you know about Jordan Clarkson's game, but I'm telling you, he is very good. Now, his long-range jump shot is nice, but it just needs more consistency. But he is a player, a very athletic player, whose defensive upside is there. He's not a great defender, I don't think, yet, but he has potential to be. And also, the other player that they got is Larry Nance Jr., who, of course, is very athletic at 6'9", I think Larry Nance Jr. is, or 6'8", or something like that. He's a high flyer and all that. And the point being is that as long as he doesn't have tremendous defensive liabilities on the perimeter, then you can play him a good amount of minutes. In other words, because in today's NBA, you not only have to have perimeter skills with the ball, but you also got to be able to defend that on the other end, along with doing what you do. And in Larry Nance Jr.'s case, that's being phenomenal around the hole, and block you a shot occasionally, off the ball, get you some rebound in his position and out of his area. Do a lot of good things on the court. Finish extremely well on the break. And playing with LeBron. He'll see even better passing now. Mm-hmm. You'll see a lot of lobs to that kid from LeBron and others. But, it's just to me, for those two, they've got to continue to develop offensively. Clarkson's got to help Cleveland from the perimeter, but also occasionally late in the shot clock or when he's rolling, they start feeding him the ball. Now, LeBron doesn't mind doing that. Mm-hmm. LeBron is not a selfish player. He will find you. So I think it's a good trade both ways. The Isaiah Thomas experiment did not work out in the least. And I think Cleveland's happy to see him go, and I think he's happy to be gone. Yeah.
For me, I'm a Lakers fan, so I look at it this way. This was clearly a move just to create cap space. Yeah. Because Isaiah, he'll be coming off the books. Channing Frye, he'll be off the books. Plus, with the first-round pick, I believe if our pick falls between 2 and 6 or 7, then we'll lose that pick. So for us, this is just a backup first-round pick because we really needed one.
Us being the Cavs.
Lakers.
Oh, Lakers.
Lakers. Okay. Yeah, Lakers. Okay. Yeah, because
you're a Laker guy.
Yeah, I'm a Laker fan. Okay. So I'm pretty sure that this is just creating cap space out there. Yeah. We already have Lonzo Ball, which I'm not the biggest Lonzo Ball fan, but I'm pretty sure he won't be going anywhere. So this is just you
would think that would be a year or two before they pull the trigger on reversing that experiment.
So this is pretty much just a rental process. Having Isaiah right now, and then he'll be gone. But like you said, it didn't work out in Cleveland. Cleveland, they're going to get more athletic with Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson giving them some scoring. And also they just made another trade as well. It's a 3-team trade with Utah, Sacramento, and Cleveland. Cleveland will send Jay Crowder and Derrick Rose to Utah. George Hill will be headed to the Cavs, and Joe Johnson will be going to the Kings. So that's another trade. Okay. So now they have a point guard.
You get stability at the point guard position, plus a guy who can defend at the one that they haven't had this year. Mm-hmm. And George Hill is a veteran in this league. He knows how to play the game, will play with LeBron and those other guys very well. Cleveland, I tell you what, we were all wondering what they're going to do, and they have tried. And I think they've improved their chances, and it gives a different feel to the NBA playoffs this year. I mean, you always see that to some degree, but this is rather large, man. I like the fact that they're at least moving some bodies.
Right. And they still have the first round pick, Brooklyn's pick. So would you give up that pick for anybody, or would you just sit tight and?
It would have to be a real big-time need, and they do have some big-time needs. I don't know. It would kind of depend on the player and the money situation and all that. But listen, you've got one shot. To answer your question definitively, I'd say yes if I found that right person, because you've really got one shot, I think, with LeBron, and that's assembling a good enough roster by 4 p.m. today, to have a serious chance to, you got to get by the Celtics this year too. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't even going to come close to happening. Matter of fact, you weren't even going to see the Celtics this year with the roster you had this year and the mess that you were. You might have lost in the first round or possibly second. But, I like what they're doing. And I think, like I said, to complete that thought, I think Cleveland has one chance to impress LeBron, and that's to build that roster where he truly can, contend for a title. But to me, it's almost all moot because whoever comes out of the West has a decided advantage. But then again, you still have LeBron James.
And some more breaking news. Cleveland, they're trading Dwayne Wade back to Miami.
Are they really?
Yeah, so Dwayne Wade is going back home.
That is pretty much a bombshell to me. That's crazy.
Now, it doesn't say who they're getting from Miami, but they said he is going back to Miami.
And that may be just so he can retire.
Yeah, I believe so too. Because he's pretty much on his last legs anyway.
There's no question.
Yeah,
love D-Wade.
So going back home to Miami, I think that'll be.
Yeah, and that clears up money too. That's basically what that's about. Yeah, so Cleveland's been wheeling and dealing, man. I got to take my hat off to them, but I still like Boston in the East, man.
Yeah, Boston, they look pretty good. I don't trust Toronto just yet. I think they have a lot to prove in the playoffs. As far as the playoffs, yeah. And they may make a trade.
And they're good. They're good.
They're a good team. They may make a trade down the line, but so far that's all. We'll just have to keep checking on the trade deadline. All right, MVP race. Who you got right now?
MVP in the NBA right now. Who have I got? Gosh, I tell you what. Let me give you a dark horse. I think Paul George is playing great basketball. Yeah. Now, it would be hard for him to win being on the same team as Russell Westbrook because, listen, I want to credit Russell Westbrook here now. Ever since, up until the start of this year, especially like maybe 10, 15 games ago, from the time that Durant walked out and went to Golden State, I thought that there was an unhealthy, for lack of a better way of putting it, overall basketball philosophy in OKC. In other words, as great an athlete / basketball player as Russell Westbrook is, and he is by any stretch of the imagination, that organization, from the guy who sells the T-shirts to the young lady who's parking cars to everybody, and I'm being facetious for a reason, seemed like everybody in that organization said, let's play a different brand of basketball than anybody's ever seen and do everything we can to set this one athlete up, being Russell Westbrook, to score the ball, no matter how many bad shots he's got to take, no matter how many turnovers or whatever. And it was just not good basketball. Now, it won 50-some-odd games with what I consider a decent roster, but not a great one, before they shipped Sabonis and Oladipo to Indiana. But it was still a decent roster. But it was just a bad way to play the game, attack the opposition and all that. And now that they've brought Paul George in and Carmelo Anthony, and they still have Steven Adams, they've lost Robertson, their tremendous defender, who couldn't shoot a lick anyway, but they miss him on the defensive end. But in spite of all that, Russell Westbrook, to his credit, has taken on a much healthier basketball philosophy / appetite. And I think everybody else in that organization, hopefully everybody, they're seeing that this is much better basketball. So they're dangerous. So I love what Paul George is doing and Westbrook. I think, of course, there's a natural nod to James Harden in Houston because, he scores in such volumes. He's not my candidate because until Westbrook shows me that he can, not Westbrook, but Harden shows me that he can lead that team on a deep playoff run because not only were they outscoring people, but they were really defending, and especially him at a high level at his position, then to me, he's not an MVP candidate. But as great as he is offensively.
A regular season award.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. So. Okay, well, let's zoom it to the regular season until he shows me some lockdown capabilities at the defensive spot. And listen, maybe he can be so great offensively and his team so great offensively that it doesn't matter. And then I guess I would have to, by default, give him the MVP award. He's tremendous offensively. I've said on record, on the air, more than 2 or 3 times that he's one of the hardest guards, hardest guys to guard in the history of the league. Maybe the most uncheckable. But it's a situation where I like my players to play both ends, and it's not that Harden doesn't play any D, but sustained defensive intensity, SDI, never forget that one, is what it's all about in that league. And the real good teams and real good players have a higher level of that. And I don't see that in Harden. But anyway, but he's definitely an MVP candidate in anybody's book.
But for me right now, I'll have Harden 1.
Yep.
I'll put Kyrie Irving number 2.
Oh, he's awesome.
And for me, I'll put Steph right there.
Absolutely.
And
you can't rule out KD.
He's
having a great year. The Greek Freak. Another one's having a great year. And imagine him with a consistent. Imagine him being around 38 to 43% from deep at some point in his career.
He could be the best player.
He could be the best player on the planet, no question. But Kristaps Porzingis, who just went down with an injury, he's not going to win it now because of that. But I think he's a serious candidate. I love his game. So yeah, they're out there. They're out there.
I just got to roll with Harden because regular season award and they all winning. Yeah. I think he's doing
Chris
the most
Paul
right now.
should get some votes.
But he stays hurt.
Yeah,
Paul,
he's been hurt too much.
He stays hurt a good bit, so I really couldn't go with him. Yep. But I think the way Harden is playing right now, I think he'll take the cake. But before we close it out, one more topic.
All right.
Top 5 players in the NBA right now.
Top 5 players in the NBA. I think we just named them. I think there's no way you can keep LeBron off. I find it hard, as great as Golden State is, to keep both of their guys off, Steph and KD. And I may not get these in the particular order that really pleases your listening audience, but I think it'd be hard to keep Greek Freak off. Mm-hmm. You know, you count the players that are hurt now. I mean, I love Porzingis, man. Mm-hmm. I think he's tremendous. But I think it's hard to keep off Paul George, and I probably named 6. But those would be, and I know I'm overlooking. I think Oladipo's having a great year. Russ is having another great year. Chris Paul, even though he gets hurt a lot, and I haven't really looked at the leaders and all that. But Anthony Davis, I don't know what kind of overall numbers. But, hey, you got to look at that Minnesota roster, too. Karl Anthony Towns is a beast. Jimmy Butler is a great player. The other night, was it last night? I did my last night. Yeah. I mean, even though LeBron blocked his shot from off the ball, somebody else was guarding him late in that game, the possession before the game winner, and LeBron came back and made the game winner over Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. That looks like, LeBron just killed it. Look at the box score. Jimmy Buckets had 35 last night.
He had a good night.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he's a top all-around player. So I think you could name probably no less than 12 or 13 guys, and if any of them got it, I'd be cool with it. Right.
My top 5, I have LeBron number 1.
Yep.
Even though they've been in the slump, Cleveland been in the slump, I still give him the nod as the best player. Then for me, number 2, I roll with Steph. I just think what he gives you on the offensive side of the ball is so lethal.
I just think he's a much better defender than people.
Yep, he is. A lot of people tell me they think that he's just a shooter, which is not true.
No,
Steph is a bad man.
Now that you've opened that door, and I don't know if you've ever heard me voice this, but I think from what you just said, and I'm not saying this now, but it just made me listen. This is I have a book. And that means a 1 to 10 sentence delivery on each player on their game. Mm-hmm. To me, Steph Curry sits atop the mountain of the purest basketball player to ever play. In other words, let's take away the defensive end for a minute, because I think there's even a lot of basketball experts who should wash their mouth out with soap like we used to do it back in the 60s. My moms and dad didn't use that on me. They just tanned my backside. But others in my neighborhood, they get their mouth washed out. But what I'm saying is, when you talk about offensive skill set, especially on the perimeter, it's dribble, pass, shoot. There have been some wonderful, wonderful, outstanding, historical Hall of Fame guys in that respect, not the least of which are people like Pistol Pete Maravich. Mm-hmm. I always got to go to Pete first because he was one of the original. But even go back as far as Bob Cousy. You could go to Magic Johnson to some degree, even though all he really had, by the time it was all over with, he had a nice little set and he even got some range on it. But dribbling and passing, he's way up there. And just guys like that, the original Isaiah Thomas. Even today's Isaiah Thomas, dribble, pass, shoot, pretty special. Kyrie Irving, totally transcendent, dribble, pass, shoot, guys. But at the top, Jason Williams, who originally from Rand, West Virginia, Randy Moss's homeboy growing up, who ended up having a real nice career. And if you've never Googled Jason Williams' top 10 jaw breakers, ankle breakers, or highlights or whatever, it's special. He was as good as it gets. And so there's been a bunch of, but when you put it all together, dribble, pass, shoot, to me, those three skill sets together. For one, let's talk about them individually. Dribbling the basketball, Kyrie Irving may be the greatest ball handler ever. I think you have to put him on the short list. But you know what else can handle it at a historic level is Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. He's got an unbelievable handle. Passing the basketball. Greatest passer ever in your book.
In my book that I've seen play.
Yeah. Is it Magic?
I wasn't born when Magic was playing.
Right.
But if you want to go that way, yeah, I can give it to Magic.
Right, a lot of people, especially my age, say Magic. I'm going to tell you, as great a passer as Magic Johnson was, listen, this is earth-shattering, and this may lose you 90% of your listening audience. But I'm going to tell you, in my eyes, I have never seen anybody pass a ball like Steph Curry. I've seen that cat play live and on TV. Live probably 2 or 3 times.
That's all one.
Right? And on TV 50, 75 times or whatever. I'm telling you, man, watch just for that element next time. Watch how Steph, off a left-handed, off the dribble, eyes Klay Thompson or Durant or somebody else on the entire opposite side of the floor, and off the bounce, flips his left hand, and there goes the ball. And it's in the catching pot. It's the most incredible. And the stuff he does around the hole, kicking out and on the break. But anyway, so dribble, pass, and then shoot.
The best shooter I've seen.
There's nobody.
Best shooter I've ever seen.
When you talk about the range, now listen, there may be the 3 greatest shooters of all time, maybe playing together right now. Mm-hmm. When you talk about Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph, but Steph with the range and the step back, come on, man.
As soon as he crosses half court,
there's something about that team when he's there and healthy, and all the other pieces around. And listen,
I agree.
You could easily make a case that Kevin Durant is the best player on that team, and maybe even the best player on the planet. And I have said that. You got to give LeBron his due, but I'm telling you, now that KD can guard and block shots and all that, he's got to be in that conversation, on that short list. And so, but by the same token, when Steph Curry has the ball in his hands, with all that around him, they're a different team because of not only his range on his shot, but also the pace at which he makes them play. And he makes plays not only making shots by himself, but getting other shots. So, I mean, to me, that's what makes them that extra bit of lead. So I think Steph Curry.
I always tell people I believe that if you take Steph away from the team, I don't think they can win without Steph. Rather than if you take KD away, I think they can win with Steph before they can win.
You know what?
With KD, man, that dude is special.
As strange as that sounds, I agree with you. I really.
He just changes the game.
I agree.
He changes the game. So that's why I have Steph at 2, KD at 3, Russ at 4, and then I have James Harden at 5. That's rounds out my top 5. But yeah, that was just Steph. Just to me,
special.
He is, man.
Super special.
He really is.
No question.
But that's all. KB, I appreciate you
absolutely, bro,
coming by here, sitting down and talking to me. Real quick, you can tell people where to find you at.
Well, I mean, find me as far. I don't do any social media. I don't do any. I'm the old school guy. I'm old as dirt, but I do have a radio show that I launch my little craziness out of and off of every night, Monday through Friday, in Spartanburg, South Carolina, on Fox Sports Spartanburg. It's 1400 AM, 98.3 FM, on the internet at SpartanburgSportsRadio.com, and on the TuneIn app. And I think the station even has a YouTube channel now.
Okay.
So that's how you catch us. I don't think you could hear or catch my show on the YouTube channel yet, but you can listen to those other 4 ways. And we do it Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., except for the nights that I travel. I actually didn't have a show last night. I went in to do a show and found I didn't have a show because they had scheduled me to be off because we were in Rock Hill last night with Presbyterian calling PC at Winthrop. But I got back in time to do the show, but they just wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be some dead air. So that's the way it was, and that's how you find me, bro.
All right. I appreciate it. And
absolutely.
That's for me. I'm Carlos Smith. You can find me on Facebook, Carlos Smith, Twitter at Carlos K. Smith. And that'll be all for today. Well, until next time, people, keep chasing dreams and stay prayed up. This is Across the Line Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Shalom.